This is Wildcat Country.
Larson tipped it. Love has it. Lewis slams it, and Arizona wins it.
The inside scoop on the Arizona Wildcats.
It's Gunnar Maldonado. He's got blockers. Touchdown, Arizona.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's time to bear down.
Welcome to another edition of Wildcat Country presented by Harrah's Auction Casino. Eric Cohen and Shane Dale on, hey, it's been a wild week. Not the team on the field. They stink. But, hey, listen, Wildcat Country never ceases to entertain, and we've certainly had that, Shane. So good to be back. Basketball season is near. Can't wait to talk about the men's and women's team because football season is not going so great.
Yeah, there was a viral video of a Colorado fan during the Colorado game week before last, laughing at Arizona Stadium after Colorado scored, laughing at Arizona fans and saying, "Hey, it's basketball season, guys." And I'm like, yeah, I can't disagree with that. But yeah, here we are. Unfortunately, 2021, 2022 level apathy, bringing it back into the fan base. But basketball season's here, and we never have a shortage of things to discuss, and that's the important thing, Eric.
So the professor, Matt Moreno from Rivals.com, will join us this week. He'll let us know his thoughts on the football team and make some picks with us in the final segment. But before we get going, I want to talk a little bit about some things that went down on the show last week. I don't want to go over this too long, but just a few things that I want to say getting into it. For those of you who watched, I asked a question last week, and the intent of my question was not to disparage any Arizona pundit personally. Shane and I have never done that on the show, nor will we. It's not our style. Regardless of anything else, I very much respect Barrett Baker and enjoy having him be a part of the show, and that's not going to change. I was in touch with fellow Arizona media members this past week, and I think those people are great, and I respect them. But that doesn't mean we all have to agree. You know, if you agreed with everything that Shane and I said, what's the fun in that? Our goal is to get the audience to think, and that's what I think that we do well in this program. It's clear that the majority of Arizona people that I've come across on social media or message boards or in person want Brent Brennan fired. I understand that. I don't happen to agree with that, but that's fine. With that said, I personally am not a fan of the social media vitriol. I understand the frustration, and I appreciate those of you who, while you may not agree with me or Shane or whomever, make cogent points and get me thinking differently, including someone that I was chatting with the other night on X, who said, you know, about the Brent Brennan using his timeouts towards the end of the game. He had a different viewpoint than I did, and I appreciated what he was saying because I didn't understand at first, but I got it. It got me to think differently. So that I appreciate. Finally, listen, we're fans on the show. We're frustrated. We're depressed at what we've seen this season. My viewpoints especially continue to change as the losses pile up. I've been plenty wrong about a lot of things Arizona football related this season. I'm not afraid to own that. I'd love to say that things are going to get better as I have in the past, but I have a hard time seeing it this year. So that's kind of what I have to say about everything that went down over the last week. Shane, any thoughts on top of that?
Is that your official statement?
My official statement.
No, not really. People can say what they want. I don't care. You know, we don't talk about individual people. Barrett Baker mentioned one last week. That's fine. It is what it is. I appreciate the viewership. Agree or disagree, appreciate it, and that's where I'm gonna leave it.
All right, let's get into Shane's stand-ups before a spirited buy or sell, I'm sure.
Well, let's start, Eric, with a little love for the soccer team, shall we?
Okay.
Olivia Ramey, goalkeeper, helped clinch Arizona's shutout win at ASU. It was her sixth shutout of the season. Easy for me to say. She had 3 saves against the Sun Devils. And Narissa Fultz was named Big 12 Freshman of the Week after she scored the lone goal in that game. I want to give a shout out to Becca Moros, the coach. She's done an outstanding job with the soccer team. You know, they finished 6-4-1 in the Big 12, tied for 6th, and they're 11-5-2 overall heading into the conference tournament. So best of luck to them the rest of the way. Men's swim and dive. I'm going to mispronounce his name, I'm sure, but Hakan Naughton. Haakon. I'm sure there's a standard way to pronounce that. But I want to mention him anyway, even though I have trouble. I could have just avoided it, but I want to give him
I appreciate you giving it a try.
There. So I could have just said, no, the heck with that name's too hard. But I didn't. And that takes a lot of guts. So give me some. No, it really doesn't. But anyway, he finished first in the men's 100 fly and 200 fly in their meet with Utah last weekend. His time in the 200 fly was his best of the season. So shout out to, I'm going to call him Mr. Naughton. How's that?
Okay.
And finally, despite the loss, we got to mention Territorial McMillan, right? A 200-yard day against West Virginia. He accounted for about 70% of the team's receiving yards, which isn't necessarily a good thing, but he's still a stud. Okay. He completed a pass and should have had a TD pass to Noah Fafita. Yeah. Should have had 2 completions. He dropped a wide open pass, and Fafita, to his credit, redeemed himself the very next play with a very tough touchdown run. But at least T-Mac is still looking sharp for the football team. That's what I got.
Okay, now let's get to Buy or Sell, presented by our friends at Ice Shaker. Go to iceshaker.com, use promo code Wildcat Country, capital W, capital C, and get $5 off. And I hope you have more success, drinking out of it than Shane does here on
off to a great start tonight
on the video stream, of course. And once, if and when you go and purchase your Ice Shaker, make sure to fill out the post-purchase survey and mention Wildcat Country, and we will be most grateful. All right, Shane, number 1, here we go. In one word, describe your feelings on Arizona football right now, and then explain why.
Okay. Well, it's an obvious one, but the word is disappointed. I think the expectations were too high, even from us. But I think even with those lower expectations, we were hoping for more than 3 wins at this point, certainly. It was all feel good up until about a month ago. Even after Jed left, we had a guy who came in, who's got strong ties to the program. He did a great job at bringing back so many talented players. He had that awesome moment with McHale during the UCLA game. You thought maybe that momentum would carry through. Whether fair or not, you thought that momentum, they'd be able to ride that momentum the Jed created and keep things rolling. But the wheels have just come off. And fan apathy has risen again. If nothing else, it's just unfortunate, but maybe not surprising in hindsight to see Arizona football fail once again to follow up a winning season with another winning season. So disappointed. I know it's a little on the nose, but that's what I got.
Mine is apathetic. I was sitting there in Arizona Stadium the other day, and I wasn't upset. I just was like, okay, this is what I expected.
That's even worse, isn't it?
It's worse than being angry or disappointed. Yeah. It's that I'm sitting there looking on my phone to see what are the scores of the other games. I just, the fourth quarter comeback was cool and got me a little excited, but for 3 quarters, I was just like, this is garbage. I don't care. And for me to say that and get to the point where I am seriously considering not going to the Wisconsin or the Houston game in a few weeks. It's a Friday night at 8:15. I wouldn't get home until 1:45, 2 a.m. There's a basketball game on at the same time. A team that will have 5 or 6 losses. If they lose this week, it might make my decision for me. But if the game was earlier, absolutely. But on a Friday night, that late after a work day, I have never been at that point watching Arizona football.
Right, and that's what I was going to say. For those who don't know, you are as loyal a fan as you'll find. A football fan specifically. There's a lot of loyal basketball fans. You're a loyal football fan too. You go to every home game. You've missed. You can count on I think on one hand how many games you missed over the last decade, probably for
decade and a half.
Decade and a half, and then you've gone a number of road games as well. So for those who don't know, coming from someone like yourself, and I'm sure there are other loyal fans who feel like the 20, 25,000 loyal who are there regardless. For that to creep in again is probably the most unfortunate thing of all of this.
Yeah, and I will still be there for ASU and Arizona because I've been at every Arizona ASU game outside of 2020 where no regular fans were allowed, thank God. But I've been every single one since 2001, so that will continue. But at this point, I am just not really looking forward to watching this team play. Last year, it was just the opposite. We were so excited. Oh my gosh, this team is great. This year, I'm just kind of ready for it to be over, to be honest, and on to basketball season.
Yeah,
I love college football. I absolutely love it.
I'm with you, Eric, because we talked about this. Obviously Arizona's a basketball school, but football is my favorite sport. I love seeing the football team do well. It's awesome. And then, last year against Utah, we were at the game against Utah where they ran up the score in the first half. We're thinking, who is this team? And now we're asking the same question, but it's not nearly as fun, and that's really too bad.
Shane, after a winless October with this caliber of a team, Brent Brennan will never be able to win back the fan base as Jed Fish was able to in 2023. Do you buy or sell that?
Uh,
Never, ever.
well, I'll sell because I don't like to never say never, but so I'll sell it. Let me try to summarize my thoughts on Brent Brennan, and bear with me on this because a lot of fans are irritated with my viewpoint on this, and I want to summarize where I'm at. So based on who returned for this team, which is thanks in large part to Brent's ability to build relationships. So let's give him credit for that. Arizona should have a better record right now, no question. Maybe a CFP bid was never realistic, but this team is talented enough to be at least 5-3 instead of 3-5, even with the injuries. Okay. Now, fans are, to put it nicely, disenchanted with them, and I certainly understand why. The offense has been uninspired, to say the least. Play calling has not been good. Too many players have not taken a step forward in their development from last year. And with all the injuries, I think it's fair to question the strength and conditioning program. Tyler Owens was outstanding in that role, and he followed Jed to Washington. I had a conversation with someone in the know before the season started who was concerned about that exact thing. And maybe he was onto something. And unless things change dramatically in November, this team's going to go bolus this year, and fan apathy is going to continue to rise. So if things continue as they have, Arizona has two options, right? Ride it out with Brent Brennan for at least another year, or start all over again. And a lot of fans are going to like this, but I am a proponent of the first option. Here's why. First, he can recruit. He has the nation's number 36 overall recruiting class for 2025 as of now, and the fourth best in the Big 12. He's a strong relationships guy, and his staff is too, as we've seen. Give him credit for bringing back so many guys, like I said, who would have certainly entertained bigger NIL offers from other schools. I think that goes without saying. And this is his first year at a power school. Could he be in over his head? Yes. Could this job be too big for him? Yes, I concede that. But I think he's a smart guy. He's a logical guy. He turned an awful program like San Jose State around into a winner. He did, just a fact. And now that he's become familiar with the landscape at Arizona at a power school, I trust him enough for now to make the necessary adjustments to put a winning team together. And I'm sure that'll include, and I would expect that to include some changes to his staff in the offseason. Though, for those who want to start over again, I get it. We both want the same thing for this program. And honestly, with a new AD in place who did not hire him, that's possible. If they can get the buyout money together, you never know. We'll have to wait and see. But I would rather stay the course at least one more season for the reasons that I just mentioned.
All right. Fair enough. My answer to that is I'm actually going to buy this. I think Brent Brennan, with the perception of the fan base, what he has done with, losing every game in October and the win over Utah at the end of September, which we were all excited about, is basically worth nothing now because they stink. They've lost 4 in a row like Arizona, and they're just not very good. So that win just looks like a game. I mean, it's not like Arizona was amazing in that game. They played well defensively, but against a team that can't score basically in Utah. So yeah, I think Brent Brennan, outside of an unexpected 6-0, 7-0, 8-0 start, which I just have a hard time ever seeing, considering the schedules, and I just looking at Arizona's future non-conference schedules. I mean, you got Kansas State coming in here next year. They probably will be ranked to start the year. For example, I just think Brent Brennan, any goodwill that he has, that he had, is pretty much out the window. And I hate to admit that. And I really hope I'm wrong.
Yeah.
I mean, I very well could be wrong. I've been wrong on a lot of stuff, as I said earlier. Been wrong on a lot of stuff. I'm not optimistic based on what I've seen from fans everywhere, from text messages to me, to social media, to message boards. I just think people are tuned out, and that's apathetic is worse than angry at this point.
I 100% agree. And I think the other thing we've talked about before is, in a new conference, you don't really see any wow matchups on there, like in matchups to get people excited. Maybe Utah is going to get to that level. Maybe it already is. Certainly you have ASU, but after that, it's, who are you going to get excited about? If a ranked team comes in, it doesn't really necessarily matter who they are. If it's a ranked team and you get it in and you have a chance to beat them, but you combine the poor performance this year with a bunch of matchups that fans are like, okay, I guess that matters to us now. That it's a really bad timing from that perspective, if that makes sense.
Do you think that a win over ASU would restore any goodwill, or just pretty much Fans are out at this point.
I think it would help in that. No, it definitely, that always helps. And I think, especially if you consider that to be the last game of the season, at this point, it seems likely it would be the last game either way.
Yeah.
I think that you can carry that over, and certainly Arizona will market that. The Territorial Cup I have behind me, that was from after the 2016 season, when that was their only, the only thing they could celebrate, because that was such an awful year. So that always helps, I think, soften the blow a little bit. But that was not the expectation coming into the season, was just beat ASU. The year before last, sure, I think we talked about, during the 2022 season, 4 or 5 wins, as long as one of them is against ASU, will feel good. And that's what they did. This year, I don't think it's going to, like putting a Band-Aid on a really big wound, but it will definitely help fans feel a little bit better. Will it help sell tickets next year? They're going to have to keep winning beyond that in order for that to happen.
Yeah, I think that's the problem. And this is where I'm concerned, Shane. If they were to lose to ASU, and let's say maybe Houston is their only win the rest of the year, if that, or they lose out, and you lose to ASU, and let's say it's an embarrassing fashion. And if the athletic department at that point, Arizona would have lost 8 games in a row to end the year. If the athletic department could find a way to raise the finances and replace Brent Brennan at that point, would you be accepting of that, or would you think it's a terrible move either way?
I wouldn't be thrilled with it, but I would say, okay, let's see. Let's see what DRF, I'm going to call her DRF, it's easier, has in store. Because I'm sure, I think she was a good pick for athletic director. So I think she could definitely go out and hire a decent coach. But to ask boosters to help with not only that big buyout, but to raise enough money to hire a big name coach, I think that's a bridge too far for one season. But you never know.
Here's the other problem that I have with a new coach. If you were to do this move, then what? If the new coach comes in and goes 2-10 next year, so we're going to feel better about that? We're not going to say,
that's my point. Yeah.
I mean, right. So it's great. And the idea of, okay, we're going to get rid of this guy because he tanked a team, he ruined a team that had talent. And we'll ask Matt Moreno his thoughts coming up in the next segment. But just between you and I for now, Shane, Brennan came in and fans view it as he ruined this team with T-Mac, who's arguably the best Arizona offensive player we've ever had in the school's history.
And fair or not, that is the perception, and I don't think that perception is going to change unless Arizona, finishes really strong in November beyond a win against ASU. I don't think that perception is going to change.
Yeah, it's a very tough one for him to overcome. I hope he can prove us wrong, but I've been wrong about it, and it's unfortunate. If you were Noah Fifita, Shane, you would leave for a higher paying, bigger university in the offseason if the opportunity arose. Buy or sell?
Just knowing him, I would sell the better paying element of it. I would buy if it's the right fit. I admire his loyalty, and I certainly don't take it for granted, because it's an extremely short supply in sports right now, including in college now with a transfer portal NIL combination. So I don't take that lightly, and I admire the hell out of him and Tedder McMillan and so many others for coming back, especially those two guys. They probably could have got paid quite a bit more going somewhere else, just to be honest about it. There was a report going around that they were offered like $3 million or so. I don't know if that was true, but so I don't take his loyalty for granted, but he needs to do what's best for him. And if he doesn't think, and I don't know if this is the case, if he doesn't think he's being developed or challenged the way he needs to be, or to get to that next level, he just doesn't think this is the best fit scheme wise, whatever. He's a high character enough guy, and he's been on our podcast a couple times. I would like to see him succeed somewhere else. As a fan, no, I don't want to see him go, but I'm bought in enough to Noah Fifita that I want to see him do what's best for him. And I feel the same way about any athlete. Jonah Coleman, I'm not mad at him for leaving. He wanted to follow his coach to Washington and continue to be developed, and that's fine. I don't have any ill will toward him or anyone else who left. But especially for a guy like Noah Fifita, who, he's still playing hard. I mean, again, that run he made, especially after the previous play, he dropped an easy touchdown. I'm sure he felt awful about it. Then he lowered his head and he took maybe an ill-advised hit, but he scored that touchdown. He hasn't given up on this team. He's still leading by example in that regard. I would love to see him back, but I want him to do what's best for him.
This team hasn't quit. And I think we saw that in the fourth quarter. That team made a furious rally.
Never
They just,
questioned that.
right. I think the other thing you have to look at for this team, I mean, they're so depleted on defense that a lot of guys are getting a chance to get playing time, and maybe that will benefit Arizona down the road.
Yeah.
I mean, and they're going to have players coming back next year that have starting experience that might not have before. I mean, if you're just looking for an optimistic point of view, but with Noah, I mean, I won't bag Noah Fafita for whatever he decides to do. I hope he stays, absolutely, but I will not be disappointed in whatever as at him personally for whatever he decides to do. As far as I'm concerned.
And I agree with you, Eric. I don't think this team's quit. I think the buy-in is still there. I think one of the common themes that some of these losses are things that are going wrong very early in games that kind of set the tone. Whether it's not recovering an onside kick that was there for the taking against Colorado, or the early fumble against West Virginia that erased a really strong opening drive. I think when things like that happen, it's so easy for college kids to start thinking, here we go again. Even though they know better, or they're positive thing. I think that's just human nature. But I was impressed with the fight going into the fourth quarter. Defense had a couple chances to hold West Virginia on third down on that final possession, and it didn't happen. Certainly injuries are a part of that. Last year Arizona was able to rotate guys in and out of defense, and now they don't have enough guys to barely put on the field, unfortunately. But I think this team still bought in, and I think Noah Fafita leading by example is a big part of that.
Yeah, no question about that. It's a great point on your part. Before we get anywhere else, talk a little men's basketball. They played Point Loma the other day and absolutely ran them out of the gym. This team looks strong. We had Matt Muehlbach join us last week. If you didn't hear that interview, go and take a listen to it. A great breakdown. He called the game again last night with Darren Sutton, did a great job. Just your thoughts on what you've seen. Obviously, it's ESPN Plus. We're probably not watching that significantly as an exhibition game, but with next week being the start of the season, just your thoughts anticipating that.
I'm encouraged as much as you can be through two exhibition games. Especially Jaden Bradley looks like he's taken a step forward. Again, it's hard to know much so far, but I think the depth on this team, like Matt Muehlbach told us last week, is good. You understand why Tommy Lloyd left a couple of roster spots or scholarship spots open, because you can fill them, but no one's gonna play because he plays 8 guys, maybe 9, and Arizona's at that already. And then you got Krivas coming back potentially next week's game against Canisius. We'll see. But I like the depth. I think they're a very well-rounded team again. I think that's been the case every year Tommy Lloyd's been in Arizona. Caleb Love looks like he's ready to go again. Bradley and Lewis look sharp. I'm excited to see what Toby Awaka can do, considering what he's looked good so far as well. What Christian Coloco and Umar Ballo have done at Arizona. If Awaka could take a next step, so it's hard to you can't be disappointed in anything you've seen so far. They're both exhibition games, but I'm excited, and there's no reason to think that they can't maintain their top 10 ranking all season.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be a tough schedule. No question about that. Get ready for the roller coaster, but it starts to get fun. I mean, they open with Canisius, then we'll be on after that to break that one down. Old Dominion next Saturday, then the following Friday, Wisconsin. Following Friday after that, Duke. The week after that, Battle for Atlantis, where they play 3 games in 3 days. Then, I mean, this is going to get fun. We'll start to make basketball picks as well on this program as we go along. It'll just be different because we're used to that Thursday, Saturday routine, and now it's Saturday, Monday, Saturday, Tuesday, something like that. So it's going to be a little bit different. It's a little
trickier. But have you made travel plans for 2027 to Las Vegas yet?
That's pretty cool. That Arizona and Duke in that what is it, Champions or whatever, Classic, whatever they're calling it. Yeah, I mean, that would be fun to go watch a game. I don't like watching basketball in a football stadium, but I'm okay. I think that would be kind of fun.
Yeah, I did. I actually covered the Final Four in 2017 when it was here, when I was with ABC.
I went one time, and it was
it was a little, I mean, I had a decent seat, even with all the press there. I had a decent seat, but it was having to bring binoculars to a basketball game is not something I'd like to do.
Having to bring binoculars and being in the first level. I was in that Cardinals red area, whatever it is, on the first level, and it looked like I was looking at ants.
That's rough.
Not great. Not something that I personally don't love that. I wish they sold tickets for higher prices and put it in a normal sized arena, but that's just me. All right. Once again, Wildcat Country is brought to you by Harrah's Auction Casino. We are very grateful to have them as our sponsor. And bear down, Wildcat fans, because it's time to spin to win up to $6,000 at Harrah's Auction Casino. It's easy. Just sign up for Caesars Rewards, play your favorite slots, and earn entries to spin the wheel for your chance to win up to $6,000 in free slot play. What's even better? You'll get $10 in free slot play just for signing up. And the more you play, the more entries you'll receive. So get ready to spin to win only at Harrah's Auction Casino. Play for all. Also, if you have no New Year's Eve plans as of now, check out Midland at Harrah's Auction Casino. Coming up New Year's Eve, hopefully we'll have some tickets to give away to that. Coming up next, it is the Professor, Matt Moreno, here on Wildcat Country.
When you're on the golf course and it's 100 degrees outside, you know what's great? The ice shaker, which keeps your water cold.
You heard the man. Get your custom Arizona Wildcats ice shaker now at iceshaker.com.
All right, Shane, class is in session. The Professor, Matt Moreno, joins us from Rivals.com. Matt, we haven't had you on in a while, but good to have you back. We have talked for about the last year how excited we all were for this football season, and it has been more than a disappointment. Just your thoughts on what you've seen from Arizona football, and I guess the second part of that question, do you blame lack of talent or coaching more so?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's a huge shock, that it's gone this way. I think there is always the potential that it was going to be difficult to follow up what happened last year when you had so many changes. You had a coaching change and number of players leaving. And so I don't think it's a shock. I think it's maybe a little bit surprising that it's gone down the way it has. I mean, I think with the pieces that remained in place off of last year's team, the pieces that got brought in, you expect it to be a little bit different, or at least be close to what, it was last year, a little bit more competitive than what it's been this season. And so to see as many issues as they've had kind of play out has been, I'm sure, disappointing to a lot of fans. And if you like good football, it's disappointing to see because there is so many talented players on this team. I would say it's a talent problem to me. I think there's a little bit of element of, coaching decisions and things like that. And obviously making some switches within the staff in terms of play callers on offense and those types of things. That's never a great sign that you had everything in place the way you wanted it, coming into the season. But when I look at this team, I just don't see enough playmakers. I think you don't have enough guys that can play at the level of someone like T-Mac. And obviously that's difficult to do. He's going to be a very high draft pick. And there's just not as many of those guys that you had out there last season. And some of those guys there's been injuries. That's a part of it too. And I think you can't, forget that part of it. I think every program wants to say, well, it's the next man up and you have to feel like you're deep. But in the age of NIL, it's difficult to be really, really deep on a team. And, it's a struggle, I think, if you aren't kind of an upper tier program, and Arizona's not that right now. And so I think you get dealt some injuries, maybe some projections, some guys that you thought you knew what you had that you pulled from the portal don't live up to what you thought, taking a chance on some of those guys. I think it really feels like there's just not enough playmakers on this team as it currently stands to get the job done that they want. And yes, it's up to the coaching staff to work through that and to have a successful team regardless of that, because that's not an Arizona problem. A lot of programs, a lot of teams right now are shorthanded and don't have, all their players, and some teams aren't, as talented as they want, and some teams are outplaying their talent. And so, that comes down to coaching. But I think at its core, when you look at this team, there just aren't enough players making enough plays. And when you're so reliant on a smaller group of talent, it becomes difficult. And so that's kind of where Arizona's at. If T-Mac doesn't have an explosive game, the offense doesn't feel quite the same. And the defense has been, I thought, probably better than what we projected, what we all thought. But there's so many injuries on that side of the ball. And, you're taking very, very key players, someone like Jacob Manu, for example, out of that equation. And it's really difficult to have the type of success you want when you're playing shorthanded and playing without those types of players. And overall, when you just don't have someone at that level to step right in. And so it's just a difficult process, but I don't blame fans for being disappointed, but I think it's, just one of those things that it kind of feels unavoidable at this point.
So yeah, Matt, when you see and hear Arizona fans like we have say Brent Brennan, he's in over his head, the job's too big for him, what is your response to that?
That's nice. Nothing's going to change. I mean, it's college football. It's go ask a lot of fan bases. They have that same feeling right now. And it's not going to change. if you're hoping for a coaching change, I understand why, I guess. But again, I think fans got spoiled with 1 year of Jed Fish being really good, because if you look at the early days of Jed Fish, weren't a lot of victories in that time either. And so you have to give programs, you have to give coaches a chance to really develop and figure out what they want to do. They have to get adjusted to their new surroundings, their new support staff, and the things they have around them. And obviously with NIL, that involves collectives and a different element now than what you would have, 5 years ago. And so I think it's fine to feel however you want if you're a fan, but to think that there's going to be a coaching change because fans are unhappy with how it's going, this is not going to happen. I mean, it'd be really surprising if
No, I'm not.
Brent
I'm not suggesting a coaching change. I'm just trying, and I don't necessarily agree with that. I'm just trying to voice because their fans are screaming at us, and so I'm trying to get your thoughts on it. And then, I think some fans will say, "Well, look what's happening in Indiana under a first-year coach. Look at what's happening under Texas A&M under a first-year coach." Why sometimes do you think it clicks right away, and other times it doesn't?
Yeah, I mean, that's a fair question. And I think if you have the answer to that, you'd be a very, very rich man, because you'd be able to handpick a coach and be like, he's going to be successful. I think it's all just part of the process. And there's going to be a ton of coaches fired this offseason once again. And there's going to be a lot of ADs who got it wrong. And there is no easy answer. You're trying to find something that just works, and you have everything in front of you and you're like, I think this is what's going to work. And sometimes you feel like you have all the answers and you have everything lined up, and it just doesn't for some reason. Brent Brennan had a lot of success at San Jose State, and there was a lot of evidence to say that he would be able to carry that over at Arizona. It just hasn't happened. And so, I understand in college sports, everybody wants everything now. It's just, you have to be patient, and that's just the way it goes. And I do think there was a pretty golden opportunity for this coaching staff with, again, someone like Tetro McMillan, Noah Fafita at quarterback, some of the players they had defensively, to really have a successful first season. And they almost needed to have a successful first season to do things the way they want and to be able to keep the momentum going. It's going to be a bigger challenge this offseason. It just is. And again, I don't blame any fans who think like, or are maybe second guessing the decision to hire Brent Brennan, but it's such a small sample size right now. And if you were to jump to this conclusion in the first year of Jed Fish, 10, a couple years later, he's winning 10 games. And so you just have to let it play out. You don't know what that thing is going to be that suddenly flips the switch. I think when you have a bigger sample size, which we saw with Kevin Sumlin, where it was like, all right, this is how it's going to be. Then I think you have free reign to be like, they need to make a move. This wasn't the right decision, but you just don't know until it happens. And so, I think you can say, yeah, it doesn't feel right right now. Something feels off. It doesn't feel like it's going to be the right move, but I don't know. It just, I get that you can pick apart, this coaching staff and decisions they're making and things that they do, but that's, if they were winning games, you just wouldn't have those conversations, and they would probably be doing things the same exact way. And so, I don't know. I get it, but I think there is no rhyme or reason, and I think there's a reason you're going to see a lot of coaches being fired this offseason once again, and AD's going, well, now, no, this guy's the right guy. You're going to see that happen all over again. And I think if there was an exact science to it, if there was a formula that worked, ADs would be able to be a lot more successful, and it's just not the case. There's a reason that we're going to be talking about this offseason. A lot of coaches getting paid a lot of money to not coach football. These buyouts are crazy, contracts are crazy, and it's just kind of how the football world works. And you want to be able to kind of catch, that flash in the pan. And Arizona had that with Jed Fish, and he got away. And so now you have to kind of figure that out again and find that guy again. And I think it's okay to kind of look at a situation like Indiana and go, hey, that could be us, but it's so different for every program. And I think that's the thing to remember mostly.
So, Matt, the Arizona's still recruiting well under Brent Brennan. They have the number 36 overall recruiting class as of now nationally for 2025, according to Rivals. The number 4 in the Big 12 last I checked. Despite the lack of success, they've been recruiting, and you noted that when Brent Brennan was at San Jose State, he came close to landing some bigger recruits that maybe he's getting now. They just flipped a commit from Cal over the weekend. Are you surprised or not surprised at the recruiting success that this staff has had, especially considering their struggles on the field this year?
Not surprised at all. And I think I've probably mentioned it every time we talk on this show, and every chance I get, that you cannot look at recruiting through a fan lens when you're looking at, hey, I would go there if they did this, or I don't want to go there because they lost this game. Recruits do not care. Like, I can't stress that enough, that they don't care about what Arizona did on Saturday. They just don't. yes, when they look at the overall season and they go, hey, they're a winning program, or they're, you know, winning in a championship game, or they're competing for a conference title. Yes, those things matter. And obviously the wins on Saturdays do end up adding up, and those matter a little bit more. But if you're looking at specific games, you just brought up an example of it. They had a commitment following a loss. Like it's how it goes. It's there's so much more to it than just what it looks like on the field on a Saturday, on a specific Saturday. They look at, does the scheme fit me? Do I like these coaches? Do I like the situation? I brought it up a couple times now, but NIL, is that correct? Do I like that number? There's a lot of different elements that go beyond just what's happening between the lines that matter to recruits. And so it's not a huge shock. I think anybody who spent any time around Brent Brennan feels like he's a likable guy. He's somebody that feels like he fully has his players backed, and really embraces families and getting to know parents and brothers and sisters and all those things. All those things add up. And so it's not a huge shock. I mean, you look at his staff that he's built, and there's a lot of good people on the coaching staff, and people that, um, recruits and coaches and people gravitate toward. And so it's not a huge shock. And I know that one thing I mentioned after Brent Brennan got hired was their evaluations at San Jose State. I said, I believe in a lot of cases, they were the first to offer a lot of recruits and identify a lot of recruits, and sometimes get commitments from those recruits, to only later see those guys leave to bigger programs, and other schools come around and go like, oh, that guy's really good. Why didn't we notice him the first time around? Well, if you look at Brent Brennan and the staff, kind of their track record is they identify those guys early and they offer them early and tend to get commitments from them early. If you're looking at what's happening right now at the Arizona's recruiting class, there's a few recruits that are getting some big offers late in the cycle here and late in their senior seasons. Robert McDaniel being one of them, just got an offer from Florida. It's one of those things that I kind of anticipated would happen, is that you really do have to trust their evaluations. And I think that's one of the strong suits of this Brent Brennan staff, is that they can identify talent. And Alonzo Carter's part of that, and Brent Brennan himself, and a lot of the staff, they are very good about figuring out who they like very early on in the process. And when you're one of the first schools to offer a recruit and really show faith and like, hey, no, we like you now. We don't need to see you get any better. We want to, but we know that you have potential. That matters to a lot of recruits. And I think Brent Brennan and his staff are very, very good at that, at identifying talent and understanding, like, yeah, maybe that's not everybody sees it right now, but we do, and we're going to offer you, and we want you to be part of our program. And I think that holds a lot of weight for a lot of recruits. And Isaiah Mizell is another recruit who was just on campus this last weekend, being heavily pursued by Notre Dame. 4-star receiver, received a bump in ranking throughout the season after he committed to Arizona. I know every fan base likes to think that us at Rivals and all the recruiting services, bump their players down once they commit to a school. Isaiah Mizell has raised his ranking, and he's now a 4-star recruit. Before that happened, Notre Dame was pursuing him. UCF is a school that's pursuing him heavily. He has other programs that want him. So far, he's stayed committed. Feels like there's a good chance he stays committed, but I think that's just another example of, hey, look at what this staff did. They went and pursued somebody. They identified him. They said, this is the guy we want. Again, recruits know that. They get that feel. Like, they know if they're a priority for you. And so I think someone like that sees, well, they wanted me from the get-go. They didn't have to wait for Notre Dame to offer and everybody else to offer. And, he can go talk to Notre Dame about that and be like, hey, well, Arizona liked me a long time ago. This coaching staff liked me a long time ago. What took you so long? And so I think Brent Brennan and his staff do a very, very good job of evaluating talent and identifying what they like. And so it's not a huge shock that they've had the recruiting class that they've had. Again, I think fans would probably be like, well, why have they not had more decommitments, or why haven't there been a rush of decommitments? And again, they don't look at things the same way that fans do in terms of the games, wins and losses, all that. They look at far more than that. And so I think a lot of the other things that recruits check off are in favor of Arizona and the staff.
If you were Brent Brennan and his staff and whoever is going to be on his staff next season, in the offseason, which is more important to you, the transfer portal or the high school recruiting portal?
High school recruiting portal is kind of how it's become.
Yeah.
It's I think the transfer portal. I think that they're going to be pretty well set. I think most programs at this point in time and how recruiting works, a lot of the work is done in the summer months, and a lot of you're seeing there are going to be some decommitments, but it feels like, as much as we always anticipate there's going to be a ton, it feels like guys are locked in more than previously. I I think the transfer portal has a lot to do with that. I think a lot of high school recruits are like, I can't play games unless I know I have a spot somewhere else. I can't play games because if I start taking visits, if word gets out there that I'm listening to other programs, Arizona's gonna be like, hey, we can go get a portal guy right now, and your spot's taken. And so, um, there has been kind of a strange kind of checks and balances thing kind of playing out here with the portal because I think high school recruits are a little bit nervous about their spot not being there if they do look around. And so, the top end guys are they know that, Isaiah Mizell, Robert McDaniel, they know that Arizona's going to hold a spot for them if they want. And so they can look around. Maybe some guys on the lower end, some guys that don't have a lot of other options, they can't do that same thing. And so, I think the high school class is going to be pretty well intact. The portal is where you have to make your money and really do a better job. And I think that it wasn't as productive as Arizona thought in the portal this last offseason. There were a lot of names and a lot of players obviously brought over from San Jose State and players retained and pulled back from the portal that stayed at Arizona. But I think if you're looking at maybe why this team isn't what we all thought it would be, there just haven't been enough hits from portal guys, through year one. And so I think whatever the strategy is going to be, and sometimes it is just luck. I mean, you're not given a lot of chances to really get to know these guys. You can watch film, but a lot of this process happens because so many of them want to enroll in the winter and get ready for spring ball. A lot of this is happening in like a span of a few days, and you have to get to know a player, get to know, does he fit with, personality wise, does he fit with the team, does his mindset fit with the team, and can he play? And that's a lot to do when you have, potentially thousands of players in the portal and you're trying to evaluate them all and come up with something in a few days. And so it's difficult, but they have to have a better success rate. I think that's going to be key for this team this offseason. And obviously you'll know soon kind of where it stands, what positions they're going to need. I mean, I don't think that you can go into this offseason going like everybody's safe and bank on, certain players being on the roster still and saying, oh, they really like it. They've enjoyed their time so far. There's just too many things that can happen. And so we'll know kind of when all that kind of starts to play out, what the needs are. So it's hard. I know a lot of fans are like, well, are they looking at this guy yet? And it's like, well, you don't know. You don't know who's going to go in the portal. Like, I know fans like to think there's this kind of inner network of things going on behind the scenes, and there is to a certain extent, but not with everybody. And, a lot of the top guys probably have an idea if they're going to head to the portal or not. And, some guys that are redshirting probably have that idea, but you really don't know until you kind of see it all play out, and then it has to happen quickly. And so I would say the long-winded answer to your question is the portal. I think they have to have more success in the portal because that's the quickest way to get to where they want to be and to appease the fan base, which again, sorry fans, that's not super, super high on the priority list. As much as, that runs everything and every program appreciates fan bases. Not as appeasing fans and making them happy is not quite super high on the priority list for college coaching staffs, unfortunately. But I think that they'll have to attack the portal, and that's going to be something because they were able to kind of do so well on the high school side. That's building your program. That's like you have to be less reliant on the portal in the years to come because of what you're doing in the summer with the high school recruiting, which is good. Obviously you want to build that foundation. Maybe you get one or two of those guys that can be a superstar right away, but you want to basically build your program and have it ready so that you can just drop in a key portal player or two. And that's ideally where every program wants to be. And so I think it's a nice balance that they have right now. But I think, again, to answer the question, I think the portal is really going to be super, super important for Arizona this offseason.
All right. So my last question here, then we'll transition you to make picks with us here for week 10 in college football. All right. So you alluded to, you don't know who's going to stay on the roster, etc. If you were to make a prediction today, once again, is Arizona's starting quarterback in game 1 next year still on the roster or not?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think so.
Shane and I talked about this earlier. I have a doubt. If I'm Noah and somebody offers me a bunch of money, I'd take a long look, and I couldn't fault him for it if he did.
I can get that, but also he hasn't lived up to what everyone thought he was going to be as well. So I do think that there's going to be, a program that is like, hey, we are missing a quarterback and we think we can put you in a better position. And maybe that's what he needs. And I understand that point, but I also think there's a lot of integrity with Noah Fafita. I think there's a lot of integrity. I think
No doubt.
he put a lot of faith in Brent Brennan. I think that, again, coming back to that family feel, You're not going to find that with every program. If you look at sidelines on Saturdays, sometimes there's some bickering between quarterbacks and coaches. And as you get players who are starting to make just as much as their coaches and maybe more than some of their position coaches, you're kind of seeing that friction, I think, a little bit more public. And I think that there's a bond between, this staff, Brent Brennan in particular, and how much, he invested in trying to make sure that Noah and T-Mac and all those guys stayed, that I'm not as sold that he jumped ship, because I do think, again, there's a lot of integrity there. And I think he understands, hey, there's a job that I came here to do and I want to see it through. And so I would say, based on that and kind of just who he is as a person and kind of getting a feel for him as a high school player and kind of this whole process, I could see him staying. I think there will be an appeal. I think, however, everyone, this is real. We know this is real, where there's some back channel things with players across the country of like, hey, if you enter the portal, this could potentially be waiting for you. So I'm sure we'll hear some of that, where there are going to be programs that need a quarterback and they're like, hey, that guy down at Arizona has been pretty good. And so I think I don't disagree with you. I do think that there's always that chance, and it would be kind of one of those opportunities where he no longer is kind of stuck to T-Mac, where the anticipation is that T-Mac is going to be gone after this season. And, maybe he goes and tries to seek out his own path. But right now, I would say I think he ends up staying.
And there you have it. Class is not in session anymore. Put your pens down. But wait, time out. We're going to have Matt on for the final segment to make some picks with us. Arizona or UCF, we'll find out next here in Wildcat Country.
Discover more Play for All at Harrah's Auction Casino.
Hi folks, here are your drinks.
Where having fun means racking up reward credits with the Caesars Rewards loyalty program that can be redeemed for food, free play, hotel stays, and more. Not only here in the city of Maricopa, but also at more than 50 Caesars properties coast to coast. From Harrah's Las Vegas to Caesars Palace in Atlantic City. What are you waiting for? Play for All at Harrah's Auction Casino, the official sponsor of Play.
All right, Shane, it is time for prediction time, and the professor is going to join us to make picks with us here in this segment. Start with our upset special. Shane, we'll go to you here first. What do you got this week?
Haven't done so well with those lately, but you know what? This week I'm going to take Syracuse is a 4-point home underdog versus Virginia Tech. Syracuse got embarrassed at Pitt last week, and I think they take it out on the Hokies this weekend. I don't think Kyle McCord's going to sack himself this week. I think he gets back up for this game, and Syracuse wins at home.
Matt, the last time you were on, once again, I gave the scoring system for how we do this. 1 point for a spread pick, 1 point for the upset special cover, another bonus point if they win outright, and 2 points for Arizona's game if you get it right. The guests are tied with Shane with 39 points, and I have 43. So we'll see if you can help the guests pass Shane. What is your upset special this week?
Last time I was on, I wanted so desperately to pick James Madison over North Carolina, and I went against it to appease the fan base and try and get people on my side, and I picked Northwestern over Washington, and it didn't work out. But I'm not above, pandering to the fan base and trying to get them on my side. So I'm going to go Oklahoma State over Arizona State, and maybe it'll work out for me this time.
That's a great pick. How about the game of the week here? Oh, going Vanderbilt plus 6.5 against Auburn. Auburn is won last week by 2 touchdowns at Kentucky. Before that, it lost 4 straight. Vandy, 3 losses on the season by a combined 10 points. We're going with Vandy getting almost a touchdown at Auburn. How about Ohio State at Penn State? The Buckeyes are 3.5-point favorites in this battle of top 5 teams. Matt, going to start with you.
I'm going to go Ohio State. Not fully sold on Penn State. I like them, but I think Ohio State is a little bit better team.
Shane.
Eric, you have convinced me that Penn State does not show up for big games. Okay, I'm on that bandwagon now, and I think Ohio State's going to be focused after that scare at home from Nebraska. So give me Ohio State by a couple touchdowns.
All right, Shane, I'll give you this one as well. Ryan Day, 5-0 against Penn State. All wins between 8 and 13 points. Penn State has lost 12 of 13 to Ohio State, and James Franklin is, since 2021, Penn State 0-6 against Ohio State and Michigan, 35-5 against everybody else. Buckeyes by 8. Give me Ohio State to cover here. How about Oregon minus 14.5 at Michigan? Shane, we'll start with you.
Dylan Gabriel's locked in right now. Oregon defense is locked in. Michigan's an average team. Home field's not going to save them. I'm going to take Oregon to cover on the road.
Matt?
I have no idea why, but I don't think they cover. I almost want to pick Michigan as the upset, and I was like, I have no reason why. I'm not a huge proponent of Oregon. I don't love their team. I think they're very, very good. Not completely sold on Dan Lanning as a head coach in major games, but this is not one of those major games. But I think Oregon wins, but I don't think they cover.
Fair enough. I think Michigan loses by 14. So they're going to get the slight cover here. So I'm going Michigan as well. All right, next game here. SMU and Pittsburgh. SMU is a 7.5-point favorite at home in a battle of ranked teams. Kind of a weird one to pick. But hey, guys, both these teams are undefeated in the ACC. Matt, start with you.
I've actually watched quite a bit of ACC for whatever reason, but I like Pitt. I think they're on a kind of an interesting little run here. I'm going to go with Pitt.
Okay. Shane.
That was an incredible win for SMU at Duke after being -6 in the turnover margin. I like SMU, but I think this is going to be another extremely close game for them. I'm not sure who wins, but I'm going to take Pitt to cover.
Pitt to cover. Hey, I'm going double not so fast. I think SMU blows out Pitt. Pitt has been due to get run this year. They have a lot of close wins. I think SMU at home wins this game by 3 touchdowns. USC at Washington. I mean, nobody thought this game would end up on Big Ten Network in November, but here we are. USC's a 2.5-point favorite. Shane, what do you got?
Yeah, Big Ten Classic. I'm wondering if this is the week that Jedfish truly unleashes Damon Williams, as much as I hate to think about what might have been for Arizona there. But USC is simply not that good. I'm a little surprised they're favored on the road. I'm going to take Washington to win outright.
Okay, Matt?
Yeah, I'm tempted to take Washington, but I think USC feels like they have some things figured out. Whether that happens or not, we'll see. But I'm going to take USC.
I don't trust Lincoln Riley on the road. He has, lost 3 straight? Maryland, Minnesota, and Michigan. Not good. Give me Washington Jedfish to get that win, to get them closer to bowl eligibility. Matt, you already made a pick on Oklahoma State getting 3 points at home against ASU. Shane, can ASU get to 6 wins and bowl eligibility this week?
It's another interesting line, isn't it? I know Oklahoma State isn't nearly as good as expected, to put it kindly, but I think they win this game. ASU's coming off a bye, and they should have Sam Leavitt back at quarterback. But I think Oklahoma State puts up at least 28 points, and that should be good enough for them to finally get their first Big 12 win of the season.
Who would have thought Oklahoma State would be 0-5 in conference play? I think they have to get this game you can't lose at home to ASU. ASU will get to bowl eligibility next week when they play UCF. Not going to happen. I like Oklahoma State. We're going with a clean sweep across the board there. And finally, UCF is a 6.5-point favorite against Arizona. They fired or demoted both coordinators this week. Matt, we'll start with you. Give us a score prediction and why.
Yeah, I mean, I know the trend or the thought is like that switch up is like everyone responds and everyone's like, cool, we're ready to go now. We kind of made some changes. We're going to like refresh ourselves. I actually like Arizona in this game. I'm not big on UCF. Not big on UCF. You can run the ball really well. They do some good things. I'm going to go 27-21 Arizona.
Wow. All right, Shane. I'd let you pick last, and it hasn't gone well for us. Why don't you give us your pick? I think I know which way you're leaning.
Well, yeah. And of course, I mean, like Matt alluded to, of course, UCF does something that might light a fire under the team right before they play Arizona. Again, I can't pick Arizona until proven otherwise. It's a long trip. UCF isn't as bad as its record, but I think Arizona is, unfortunately, right now. UCF's number 1 in the Big 12 in rushing yards per game. RJ Harvey has over 1,000 rushing yards and 13 touchdowns already. UCF does not have a good pass defense, so look for T-Mac to have another big game, but I don't think it's going to be enough for Arizona to keep up. And then, of course, you have that travel across the country element for Arizona. You take all those elements. Give me UCF 31-16.
31-16. All right, I get to go last here finally. Listen, I would love to pick Arizona. I think Arizona is due to get a win at some point. Oh, wait, who am I kidding? They stink. I can't pick. I've seen them 3 out of the last 4 weeks in person. They're not going to win a game. I mean, they'll be lucky to beat Houston in a few weeks. UCF has lost 5 in a row. I get that. Arizona is going to be losing 5 in a row after they lose this week. UCF 34, Arizona 23. Too many injuries on defense, or I would have considered picking the upset. All right. Great show once again for the Professor Matt Moreno. Thanks so much for joining us. Shane Dale, I am Eric Cohen. Thanks for listening. And as always, bear down.